When you take an L for the tune of $3,575, there's not much you can talk about, but I'm going to try on this segment of The Gig Geezer. If this is your first time checking out The Gig Geezer, if you're a returning visitor of The Gig Geezer, thanks for coming by. And if you would not mind, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I just parked my van here at the Gig compound. I'm actually glad to be back here. I left here 12 hours ago thinking that I was going to be picking up a load in Knoxville, Tennessee, traveling to Miami, Florida. I've returned to Columbia empty and having lost altogether to the tune of $3,575. And I'll explain that later in this segment. What I want to do right now is just segue to where things kind of fell apart today. And then when I come back, I will sum up everything as to explaining the tune of having lost $3,575 today. I began documenting this segment of The Gig Geezer whereby I am just beyond mile marker heading westbound in North Carolina, and I'm at a rest stop. I'm at the next, probably the last rest stop on I-40 as you're leaving North Carolina, entering into Tennessee. My intent was to do something that was a little crazy, but it was for more so of a personal reason behind it, though, in that I had booked a load early this morning. Today is Friday, September 29, 2023. And the load originated in Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, I've not been to Knoxville since 1995. When I thought about this, it's like, man, a lot of the places that I've been going to of late are places that I've not seen or gone in almost 30 years, back in my days as a newspaper reporter. Well, the destination point was Miami, and with it being South Florida, I thought of my queen, and it would have afforded her an opportunity to visit some people who are very dear and important to her. And so she would have accompanied me on this trip had I been able to complete picking up the load and then obviously bringing it back through Columbia and then heading to South Florida. Now, this load would have paid me $1,100. The $1,100 would have justified me doing something like this, though. But like I'm speaking of would have and in past tense and all that stuff, because I got taken off of the load, because when I got about an hour and 15 minutes outside of Knoxville in these hills and all, I started hearing some funny sounds, and as I would drive, I kept hearing this sound on the passenger side, and it got pretty funky. And I got out, I pulled over, looked around, didn't see anything. I thought, well, maybe it's just the road itself, because when you're driving over certain stretches of road, the roads may not be as maintained enough, or they've been worn in such a way that it causes a different sound. Well, I drove for a few hundred yards, and the sound seemed to have gone away. But then I get further along, and I'm hearing the sound again, and it's not getting any better. And so what it amounts to is I basically crawled and stopped for like the next mile until I got to a place where I felt comfortable, where I could pull over and try to look really into the situation. And what I noticed when I took off the wheel cover and actually as I began to take off the tire, I noticed like some little metal shavings around that collected on the wheel itself. And well, that's an obvious sign that a wheel bearing had gone bad. And wheel bearings don't tell you when they're going to go bad, at least what I'm finding out in a 2019 Ford Transit 250. I have had wheel bearings to go bad on me on a 2011 Nissan Maxima. And when the wheel bearing went bad on me in the Maxima, it sounded as if the caliper had frozen on me, and it made a real bad grating sound. And so the first time it occurred, I paid someone to replace the wheel bearing. The second time it occurred, I knew what to do, and so it cost me half as much. The first time it cost me like $450. The second time it cost me like a couple hundred to do it because, like I said, I did it myself. And what I remembered with replacing that wheel bearing the second time, you had to really knock the shit out of that thing in order to get it to fall off, and then you replace it. So you have to take off the wheel, then you take off the caliper, and then you take off the rotor, and there you have the wheel hub itself. On the Transit, I believe it's the same. It looks like it's the same thing, but what I had to do was call a mobile mechanic. Now he's probably about 40-45 minutes away from me, and so the part itself is going to cost a couple $100, which I kind of figured, and then he's charging me $250 labor to come out here to replace it himself, or put it on himself. Had I been in Colombia, I probably would do it myself. I'd get an F-150, go to Advanced Auto, and get it, and then look at a couple of YouTube videos and do it myself. I may end up having to replace a wheel bearing on the other side or in the rear. I don't know, but at least I'll know what to do next time. So that cost this stop is costing me $1,100 plus an opportunity. My queen doesn't know yet because she's at work. But my queen doesn't know that this trip ain't gonna happen. Now, my broker, I informed her of everything, and she says, well, depending on when this is all taken care of, she will work to try to get me a load. Probably not coming back, but she'll work to try to get me a load today or this weekend or what have you. So that's where I'm at now. When I get back with you, it'll be when the mobile mechanic comes out here. One other thing, what I didn't do was contact roadside assistance. Force, I didn't have to contact roadside assistance, and the reason being, I'm thinking as an insurance agent, because whenever this is a little bit of tidbit that can help you. While it's kind of a conundrum when you have insurance for reasons when things happen, and so the company says, oh yeah, we'll be there for you and all, but it comes at a cost. And so if you contact roadside assistance, depending on what it is, it may come back on you come renewal where you get rated up. Or if you have, obviously when you have a claim where you're in an accident or something to that effect, they're going to recoup their cost on you at the next renewal period. I've already had a window claim during this current policy period with this van, and in South Carolina, while South Carolina is one of two states, the other being Kentucky, where you have zero deductible glass replacement for your vehicle. So that means basically it's not going to cost you anything to have glass replacement based on an insurance claim, so long as you have comprehensive coverage. But the problem is that depending on, there's some other factors involved though, but there's a likelihood that when I see my renewal in a few weeks, when my commercial policy renews in January, there's a chance that my premium may go up because of that single glass claim. All right, it is 2 hours later, and I am back moving. The guy who assisted me, his name is Michael Ferguson. I don't know what town he's out of, but he said that he had to drive all the way back to Asheville to get a part. And it happened to be a cash transaction. And it just so happened I had that type of money on me. But the interesting thing was that I really lucked out. What he told me was that that right front wheel was about to seize on me, and that would have caused the wheel to come off. And it'd been a very, not a bad day, but a bad month and maybe a bad year. So it cost me $500. It was $227 plus tax included, for the bearing, which is about what I thought it would be, because it was like $185 when I bought a bearing for my Maxima back in 2019. And then he charged me $250 for coming out. So I told him $500. How about $500? He said, yeah, I'll take that.
and we chatted up a little bit when it came about taxes. I'll put it like this: we may be on opposite ends of the political spectrum, but the one thing we agree on is paying as little taxes as possible, and if necessary, and if that means by most legal means necessary to pay as little as possible and still not be audited, so be it. But yeah, so as you see on the inset with some of the action that was involved, it involved taking off the brake caliper and then taking off the rotor, and then he had to take out the bearing which was bolted in. Unlike with my Maxima, where I had to knock the shit out of it with a 25-pound weight, it was a little easier with the Ford. The other thing is that I went ahead and changed my front brakes. Now, I mentioned about a brake job. It cost me $86 to do a brake job. That was because I bought all the brakes and did the brakes myself. And so, but if there's one thing that I'll say from Mike showed me a really nice trick in terms of, as you can see here on the inset, a really nice trick when it comes to pushing in your your brake cylinders, whereby you put in one of your old pads and then use a C-clamp and just push it in instead of fucking with it like you push one in, put one in, and all that stuff. No, you get them both in at the same time. So I thought that was real cool. Now, in a situation like that, when you're back rolling after feeling as if you were going to be stranded in the mountains of North Carolina near Tennessee, you're thinking, okay, man, let's try to make the best of today. Well, to add insult to injury, I saw a freight opportunity that came across my phone screen not once but twice, meaning that there was a possibility that I could have gotten it. It was over in Knoxville. I was about an hour away, but still, I've happened to catch opportunities on the freight app when I'm more than an hour away, and so I'm not saying something that's just wishful thinking. But that freight order was $680.72. So now you add $1,100 that I've lost out on because it took me off that load. Then you add the freight, $680.72. You're looking at now $1,780. Okay. Now, we don't add a couple of other gig app opportunities because I would think it's fair to say that my proximity to those locations may have made it difficult for me. There was one in which I was like 30 minutes away, but I'm not gonna go into much detail about that one. But the next punch to the midsection, or the punch to the face that I took, was a couple hours later. I'm near Spartanburg, and I happen to notice a load opportunity that's originating out of I happen to notice a load opportunity that's originating out of Wilmington, North Carolina. The bid amount was $1,200, and I actually talked to the broker who posted it, and what he was telling me, as you can see here on the inset, this was a furniture opportunity. There were 3 stops involved. There would be some white glove treatment to the loads, but it was clearly something that I can do. The sticking point was availability. Now I'm on the road, and I'm thinking that, well, maybe I can get there by like 5 o'clock. And he's like, no, man, I can't. I need somebody like 2 hours ago. So an opportunity for $1,200 just went. So now we're at $2,980. So when you add in the $500 that I paid Mike to replace my front wheel bearing, we're at what, $3,480. And then you add $75 for gas that I put in 12 hours ago. I said $35.75. I'm going to stick to that number. The actual number is $35.55, but $35.75 sounds like a round number. And so
I think that's not over exaggerating things. So two things that I could talk about if you want to try to find something that might be worthy, that might be good news to share. Well, I'm still on that initial tank of gas. I got about 50 miles left on the tank, but I went all the way there and came back on that single tank, well over 425 miles. So that's a good thing. My van is getting me good gas mileage. The other thing that I can share is that, well, if for nothing else, if for nothing else, this part here could have spelled not only a bad day, but a bad month, and maybe off to a very bad start to the final quarter of this year. This is my right front wheel bearing that was replaced. This thing was very close to seizing, and if it would have seized, there was a potential of me losing a right front wheel on that road, I-40 going westbound. So when you look at it in those terms, sometimes you lose to win. And I lost big today because I still have a zero in terms of earnings today. I've never had a zero earnings day in which I went out and tried to make money and come back home and still got a zero. I've never done that. But there's always a first, and today's that first. So usually I would say, hopefully the content that I've shared here is useful and informative. And if you like the content that's been provided in this segment of the Gig Geezer and any other segment of the Gig Geezer, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm gonna stick with that, but I also add one other thing. When I paid the guy to fix the van, it just so happened that of all days, when I was heading to the gas station this morning, 12 hours ago, I decided on a spur of the moment, and you may say it was that still small voice, to stop by the bank teller and withdraw $800. And what I was going to do was, once I got back to Columbia with that load, that 600-pound machinery load, once I got back here, I was going to deposit that in another bank account. Well, as it turned out, Mike primarily dealt cash and maybe Cash App. He didn't deal with credit cards. And so it just so happened, of all days, I rarely carry cash. I might have on me at most $20 in any given time. Most times I have no cash. And so the fact that I happened to go by the teller, withdraw that money, I was able to pay him put in his hand 10 50s, 10 $50 bills, and we called it good. So that's all I have to share for this segment of the Gig Geezer. And again, if you like the content that's been provided in this segment of the Gig Geezer and any other segment of the Gig Geezer, hit that subscribe button. Give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm Inwood Lane. As always, may your grind and may your hustle continue.